This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Hey, buddy, just wanted to say thanks again for the awesome job you did Friday morning. That was great. Just started out our day perfectly and put a cap on our event. I just thought it was awesome, man. You did a great job. But even more than that, just appreciate your spirit in the room, man. Seemed like you're just more alive and just more enthusiastic than ever about things you're working on and things the family's doing. So I just want you to know I appreciate you, man. Travel safe.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 2119. Thank you for joining me today. We got a great show for you. Our guest today will be none other than yours truly, so he'll be here with us in a moment. Just kidding. I know. Humor is not my thing. Anyway, so some interesting data that's come out. Builder confidence is at its highest level since August. The builders are quite happy, those home builders. The expectation of future rate cuts and a limited inventory of existing homes is buoying home builder activity. So they are happy. Let's look at some actual data and see how happy they are or should be. So here we compare last year with this year. And since we don't have much data for this year yet, it'll be a relatively small comparison. But this is the number of housing starts, and it shows you that housing starts were down 0.7% compared to last year. So in a time where inventory is constricted, where we need more inventory, we actually have fewer housing starts. How do they let that happen? Well, I think there are a lot of situations, but one of them is definitely the shortage of buildable lots for home builders. There is a huge struggle, and we did report on it on a previous episode just briefly about builders, but I keep reading about this, how builders are really struggling to get land to build those houses on, and they need that land obviously to build. But if you look at last year and you see that this month is actually one of the, well, no, it actually is not one of, it is the worst month compared to any months last year in terms of housing starts, meaning worst. Well, I guess it depends your perspective, of course, but worse meaning there are fewer housing starts. I'm sort of coming at it from the angle that we need more inventory. But hey, if you own lots of houses, you're happy that there isn't much inventory because it is putting upward pressure on your rents and the prices of your properties. So it depends how you look at it, but overall, inventory shortage persists, and it looks like it will persist for quite a while longer. All right, we have got a Zoom meeting. I don't want to say webinar because these are Zoom meetings, right? Where you can interact. It's not one to many. It's a meeting where you all can come and interact. And it is on our Alabama offerings. We've got some really special offerings in Alabama, pre-leased properties, some secrets of Alabama real estate investing. And that is coming up in 2 days from the time of my recording. So it is this Wednesday. Go to jasonhartman.com/Bama. I know, kind of cute. jasonhartman.com/BAMA to register for that. It's totally free. You can talk to some of our local market specialists in Alabama and get your questions answered, but they'll also be presenting some of their opportunities. And thanks to all of you who registered for the cruise, we have the first batch of room assignments for your cabins. Those are coming to you any moment now. They are all ticketed and you're all set for that. Now, for those of you who still want to go on the cruise, and I know there are many of you that I keep hearing from, but you couldn't quite make a reservation yet, just go ahead and reserve your room at the website at jasonhartman.com. It's right on the front page there. And I do have to tell you, though, that those rooms are now, because they're floating rates, they're subject to price changes and availability. If we don't get the room at that price, or there's not a room available at that price quoted, we'll just refund your money or let you make the decision on whatever the new deal is, because our room block is totally sold out and totally booked. But you can still go. It's just subject to availability. That's all. So go to jasonhartman.com and register, pick your room if you want, and hopefully our travel agent will be able to make that room happen for you. If not, you'll know in about a week, and we'll just refund the money if it doesn't work out. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and get to our main show today. And this is a live talk that I did recently to an audience, and I think you'll enjoy it because some of the dynamics in here discussed are pretty interesting, especially the back to the future component. I want you to pay special attention to that during this presentation. So here we go. Let's get into it, okay? So just a few things for context, really, really important. We have multi-decade high interest rates. Obviously, I don't need to tell you this. It's absolutely crazy what these interest rates are doing. The fastest increase in history. And since with real estate, we've got what? We've got a credit-based asset. And that credit-based asset, you change the cost of money, you change the cost of the asset, right? And so the cost of money has literally tripled in terms of mortgage rates. And it is absolutely incredible that our favorite asset class has been so resilient. I mean, just an incredibly resilient asset class to be doing as well as it is doing when you triple the cost of money. Affordability is the lowest it's been in 4 decades. The last time affordability was better was in the early 80s. So it's absolutely shocking, right? Young people can't afford a home, right? They're all saying it. How many millennials in the room? Okay, not as many as I thought, actually. I think most of them are in the hallway, but yeah. Anyway, so, millennials are complaining like crazy, and some of their complaints are legitimate, right? And, the meme, hey boomer, right? You've all heard that meme, where they're criticizing their baby boomer parents for leaving them with crumbs in terms of the economy and life and so forth. And they're saying they can't achieve the American dream. But what we really need to do is we really need to kind of analyze that a little more deeply and see if that's really true. See, millennials compare themselves to their baby boomer parents, and they say, when my parents were 30 years old, they could afford a nice house and start a family and all this kind of stuff, right? But the reality is millennials are on the slow life plan. So they're doing everything about 6 years later than their parents did. So when you take a 30-year-old baby boomer and compare it with a 36-year-old millennial, it's about the same, okay? The millennials really aren't that bad off. So, just a comparison there. But of course, it's complicated. Then they'll say things like, well, my parents didn't have big student loans, and we do. And they're right. College has become a complete and total scam. I mean, it's massively overpriced. We all know that. But you know what that 36-year-old millennial doesn't have a lot of times? They don't have children, and they're expensive, those children. So you compare it again, and you see the truth comes out, and the comparison gets a little more realistic. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. Just wanted to share that with you. A lot of people, as they're trying to figure out the real estate market and trying to predict what is going to happen next, a lot of them are in this situation where they have the wrong context. And I think context is one of the most important things in life. There's context and there's content. And content is what most people kind of look at. They think, okay, this is what we've got going on. This is the furniture in the living room, for example, versus the context, which is the environment itself. It's the living room, right? You can rearrange the furniture, but when you rearrange the furniture, you're still inside the same room, right? So that's a distinctly different thing. And the other thing a lot of people aren't thinking about is they're not thinking about one of the most expensive things in life. And what is that most expensive thing in life? Well, it is this. It is opportunity cost. And I like to say on my podcast all the time, you can't hear the dogs that don't bark. And it's just a funny deficiency we have as people because our minds rarely pay attention to things that are unseen. Yet sometimes the unseen things can be the most impactful and the most important things. We tend to focus on what we see and what happens, and that's fine, but sometimes we need to ask ourselves, well, what might have happened or what didn't happen because of something? So if you surf around YouTube, as I do, you see a lot of doom and gloom videos with clickbait headlines talking about how the real estate market is falling apart, it's crashing, the economy is falling apart, the world is going to end, the BRICS nations, Brazil and Russia and all this, they're all getting together and they're going to gang up on the U.S. All these dying countries are going to gang up on the U.S. Yeah, right. Don't worry about the BRICS too terribly much, okay? And they're going to trade outside the dollar. Just what that discussion's about a little bit is, of course, since the Bretton Woods conference in the mid-40s, right before the end of World War II, all these countries got together and agreed that the U.S. dollar would be the reserve currency of the world. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that all international trade has to take place in dollars, in U.S. dollars, which is very beneficial if you control the dollar. So the U.S. had a huge advantage for many, many decades. And a lot of economists and doom and gloomers and fear porn purveyors are saying this is coming to an end. This reserve currency status is coming to an end. Now, why does that matter so much? Well, it matters so much because if the U.S. keeps printing money, it gets this huge benefit to pay off its debts in cheaper dollars. So years ago, I trademarked a strategy about this and how we can use it as investors, and I talked about it at a prior Family Mastermind, which is called inflation-induced debt destruction. I know it's a mouthful. Repeat after me. Inflation-induced debt destruction. Come on, let me hear you. Inflation-induced debt destruction. Oh, that was good. Okay. Yeah, very good. Okay, so anyway, that's basically the strategy the United States is using. And we as investors can use it too. Because think about it. If we borrow $1 million to buy some properties, we basically get the value of $1 million today, and as we go through time, we pay it back in cheaper dollars because inflation debases the value of that $1 million. So if over the course of, say, 10 years, you have 30% inflation cumulatively over 10 years, then you're really paying back only $700,000, not $1 million. This is beautiful. It's the hidden wealth creator with income property. So that's why buy and hold income property investing is so great. And then you say, of course, Jason, well, you have to pay an interest rate on the mortgage. Well, no, you don't. I don't pay any interest on my loans. Do you have those 0% interest loans on your mortgages? No? Really? Well, I just tell my tenants to pay them. So I don't pay any interest. Yeah, you do this too, right? Hopefully, you delegate the responsibility of the debt to the tenant. And then you tell them, you know what, that's not good enough for me. I want a little extra every month. We'll call that positive cash flow, right? So it's a beautiful asset class. It's multidimensional. And while everyone is focusing on content rather than context, right? They're focusing on what our price is going to do. Is real estate going up or down? And if it goes down, it's bad. And if it goes up, it's good. For some reason, that's the way we all think.
In the real estate game, we love leverage because we can do more with less. If you're in the active side of the real estate business, like wholesaling or flipping, great software offers even more leverage because it solves problems like lead tracking, marketing, sales, and even operations. That's where our sponsor, REsimpli, comes in, like list stacking, driving for dollars, automated drip campaigns, cold calling dialer, complete phone system, email management, speed to lead, buyer management, task tracking, accounting, and so much more. This powerhouse software eliminates the need for juggling multiple subscriptions and different complicated integrations. So check out REsimpli if you want to streamline your investing business and start closing more deals. They made a special discount offer for my followers where you get 50% off your first month at REsimpli.com/Hartman. That's REsimpli.com/Hartman. Plus, they're throwing in a 14-day free trial, so don't miss out. Take a look today. But that's only part of it. Remember, most of the iceberg is below the water. It's the stuff you can't see, all those hidden wealth creators like inflation-induced debt destruction that are going on behind the scenes. So back to the dogs that don't bark. So it's interesting that, if someone is selling an investment and they're out there making lots of promises, lots of hype, the FTC is going to shut them down and people are going to sue them, right? Because they're promising things they didn't deliver. But the dog that didn't bark is all of the purveyors of negativity out there are causing people to not take action, and they are having a huge opportunity cost. Why isn't anybody suing them? Really think about that. It's an interesting thought, okay? Because all of this negative media is causing people to lose opportunities. It really is. It's a serious thing we need to think about. But that's the world we live in. And look, throughout history for eons of time, our minds were honed to make us survive, okay? To make us keenly aware of threats in our environment. So we are very good at spotting negativity. Because through most of our history, until literally just recently, like the Industrial Revolution, we lived in an environment of threat and scarcity. And now we live in an environment of abundance and opportunity. And it's going to take a long time to recondition our minds. This happens very slowly. So we just need to understand the dogs that don't bark can be the most important thing. Where did that idea come from? It came from an episode about Sherlock Holmes. Okay, and in this episode, there was a murder, and everybody was trying to figure out who was the murderer. And Sherlock Holmes brilliantly figured it out because there was a dog that witnessed it, and the dog didn't bark. That means the dog knew the perpetrator. Okay, so sometimes the thing that is unseen, that didn't happen, is the most important thing, but it's hard to evaluate. Now look, some people accuse me of being too optimistic. Some people accuse me of talking my book, right? And saying, real estate is much better off. Everybody else is so negative, talking about a housing crash, all of this stuff. Yet I'm out here getting trolled on YouTube and other places, and people say I'm just way too optimistic. Look, I want to tell you, I am under no delusions. Our economy is built on a house of cards. It is like this super complicated, overly financialized environment that can just crumble in so many ways, like derivatives, for example. Okay, the derivatives market is hundreds of trillions of dollars in value. And one of the important things to understand, when someone throws out numbers like that, it's just not even meaningful. And the reason it's not meaningful is because we don't really ask ourselves compared to what. So it's just good to kind of know a few little numbers to compare things in your head, because $1 trillion doesn't really mean much to anybody. So the size of the US economy, in other words, all the efforts of all the people in the United States every single year add up to something like $24 trillion. So there's a comparison. The revenue the federal government takes in every year in taxes add up to about $4 trillion. Okay, the global economy of the entire world's GDP, all the efforts of all the people on Earth add up to, something like a little over 100 trillion, 120 trillion a year, something like that. Okay, so there's a perspective. So if the derivatives market is $700 trillion, or some outrageous number like that, and it cracks, the economy is over, right? That's what they'll tell you. But what they don't tell you is that a derivative is just a thing about a thing. That's my highly educated, don't look that up in Investopedia, I made that up, okay? And actually, Kim and Robert Kiyosaki made me really understand derivatives very simply a long time ago. And Kim, you might remember this, you were talking about orange juice, and you were saying that's a derivative of oranges. Not complicated, right? It's easy to understand what a derivative is. But they've so financialized the economy that it has become a house of cards, and a lot of things can make it fall apart. But compared to what? Every economy on earth is like this. Okay? It's all relative. That's the important thing to know. You know what I said to all my listeners? I started podcasting in 2005, so I've been doing it a long time, before anybody knew what a podcast was. And what I used to say to my listeners when the Great Recession hit is I said, look, most people think that started when Lehman Brothers failed. What was the world like the day before Lehman Brothers went down? Well, there was a certain amount of gold, there was a certain amount of oil, there was a certain amount of real estate, and there were all these businesses and companies and all this money in bank accounts and, all of this stuff was in the world, all this wealth. And the day after Lehman failed, all of that was still there. It changes places, but it's still there. It's the same amount of wealth, okay? So we've just got to be on the right side of that trade and help our students be on the right side of that trade. So is a collapse coming? I don't know. Yes, someday, okay? Just not quite yet, okay? It's coming, though. So I'm on record. The collapse is coming, okay? You heard me say it. All right. So it's interesting to look at the experts and see what they predicted. They all revised their predictions pretty much upward because the real estate market has surprised them. And it's done a lot better than they thought it would. In fact, we have literally year-over-year appreciation after tripling the cost of money. It's insane. So the experts have all been wrong, okay? I know I'm wearing out this chart. I've shared it a lot, but it's so important. Context and content. Most people are talking about what happens now if someone buys a home today and what they're facing versus what's really important, which is all of the people, the millions and millions of people who bought or refinanced a home during the COVID era. That's more important than what someone experiences today, and I'm going to tell you why. 25% of the mortgages in the country, approximately, are at or below 3%. 65% of the mortgages in the country are at or below 4%. These people have very affordable homes. And guess what? Not surprisingly, they're not selling. Now, everybody freaks out when the interest rates go up. When the mortgage rates go up, everybody's so worried. They're like, oh my God, the market's going to crash. It's got to crash. The rates are so high. There are 140 million housing units in the United States. And the vast majority of them have very cheap, affordable mortgages. And actually, 40% of them have no mortgage at all. As everybody's talking about a crash, these people are sitting here saying, my deal is so good, I'm never going to give it up. So that's the lock-in effect. It's like working for a big corporate employer and having the golden handcuffs, right? You stay there at that job because what they've dangled into the future with your retirement plan, et cetera, is so good that you're just not going to give it up. And that's exactly what they're experiencing. So the higher interest rates go up, the more valuable the existing mortgages in the market are to all the people that have them. The mortgage is the asset. Think about it that way, okay? All right, inventory, real quickly. There's just over 500,000 homes on the market in the U.S. This number is going up. Inventory is definitely increasing. At the lowest point during the COVID era, we had 240,000 homes for sale in the country. So inventory is increasing, but compared to what? So if you compare it to 8 years ago or any one of several years in the last 8 years, we should have about 700,000 more homes for sale. So we have a huge inventory shortage still. But if you fall for the clickbait in the media, it'll say inventory is skyrocketing. Okay, compared to what? Yes, that's true, but it's not that bad yet. Okay, so we need to be at this much higher level. About 1.2 million is about the normal market, which gives us, give or take 6 months of supply. Nobody's selling their home. Fannie Mae doesn't have any foreclosures to sell. Sorry, folks, okay? One ingredient you must have if you want to have a housing crash is millions of distressed sellers. You just don't have that. If you're in the foreclosure business, there's hardly anything going on, okay? Mortgage delinquency is below, or it falls to the lowest level since 1979. So how many homes are underwater? Well, let's ask the question, compared to what? Right now, 2% of the homes in the country are underwater. In other words, they have negative equity. In 2008, 26% were underwater. This is different. Now, you might be thinking, why did I put the turtle on there? That cute turtle, what's it have to do with it? Okay, we'll go to this one instead. It's a better looking slide. Okay, 26%. We don't have that. We would have to see a massive increase in underwater homes for people to be in distress. They're just not there yet. Now, this is the mortgage debt in comparison to disposable income. And you can see since the early 80s, it's almost the lowest it's ever been. Let me blow that up for you. It got a little lower during the COVID era, but it's still very affordable. These houses are for people. And you know what? It's interesting that one of my fellow speakers this morning was talking about Back to the Future, Dolph, right? And this was already in my presentation. So what we're going to do here is time travel for a minute. So let's time travel. Let's assume we bought or refinanced a home during the COVID era. And the median mortgage payment then was just over $1,000. The house was about $400,000. And that was like traveling back in time 10 years because you got the same payment, approximately, on a $225,000 house back then. But what does that really mean? That means the people that bought or refinanced during the COVID era have the same deal all the people got 10 years earlier. Pretty good, huh? Right? Say pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. But wait, there's more. It gets better. Since then, we've had 26.7% of something. What might I be talking about? Inflation. Cumulatively, we've had 27% inflation. Officially, now the official numbers underestimate inflation massively, but let's just go with the official numbers for a second. So let's look at our chart again. We have to revise it to see the reality, to see the truth in this chart. Because the truth is that in that 10-year time period, yes, we might be writing the same check every month, and tens of millions of other people are writing the same check for their mortgage every month, but the real value of that check is only $730 a month, adjusted for the dollars 10 years earlier. In other words, in constant dollars or real dollars. That's the way an economist talks about it. What does it really feel like? How much money do you feel like you're giving up every month, right? $730. That's the mortgage payment most people in the country really have, okay? And if you adjust the price of the house, it was $225,000 back then. Now it's $290,000. So the price of the house is a little more expensive for sure, but again, it's not $397 like most people think by looking at the sticker price on the house. So we've got to have those comparisons. We've got to use inflation-induced debt destruction, which is this phenomenal, phenomenal strategy. There's recordings of me talking about that at prior Family Mastermind meetings or on my website. You can go and look up all the podcasts where I talk about that. There is a war going on. And I know everybody's thinking about AI, and it's just blowing us away with its capabilities. It's incredible. But the war going on really is between bad fiscal and monetary policy and technology. And the debate and what we need to know about the future is, are we going to have inflation or deflation? Will prices go up or will prices go down? I interviewed an interesting author that wrote a book called The Price of Tomorrow. He's been on my show. And his thesis, because he's a tech guy, is that we're going to have massive deflation. The future is deflationary because technology is making everything cheaper and better. And that's true. But the question is, who will win this war? Will it be the incredible benefits of technology that it brings to all of our lives? Or will it be bad fiscal and monetary policy? In other words, that's inflationary because printing money is inflationary. If you create more currency units and they chase a limited supply of goods and services, all the holders of those goods and services will raise the prices, obviously, right? Because there's lots of demand. Most basic law of economics. So I don't know who will win this war, if it'll be technology or bad fiscal and monetary policy, but it's a war, for sure. So that's what we need to think about in terms of will the future be inflationary or deflationary. But I would submit to you, and you probably all agree with me on this, is that with artificial intelligence and generative AI, we are at a point that is probably as significant as the internet itself in the 90s. That's just massively changing the world in ways we don't even know that yet. But what about the elephant in the room? Okay, well, what's the elephant in the room? It's unemployment. Is it going to skyrocket? Will it be really bad, and will this cause the party to be over? So I took a clip of this YouTube video with Scott Galloway And it shows the layoffs at the big tech companies we've all been reading about. When Musk took over Twitter, he laid off 80% of the staff. Facebook, Fakebook, Meta, whatever you want to call it, those criminals, they laid off 24% of their staff, right? And on and on. But the question is, compared to what? Are these layoffs really that significant? What most people never think about is this, the next one. Look at how many people they hired during the pandemic. I did say pandemic on purpose, by the way, okay? So, these companies hired so many people. So the layoffs compared to the hiring in just the past couple years, the net is still a huge increase in number of employees, okay? So I went to one of my lenders, I got on Zoom with them, and I thought, okay, what if the worst happens? Could someone qualify for a mortgage on unemployment insurance? The answer might surprise you. Now, no lender is going to give you a loan if you're unemployed, right? But just with DTI, the debt-to-income ratio, I've owned a few mortgage businesses over the years, right? Would a lender qualify you getting just your unemployment insurance from the government? And the answer is actually yes. Okay, so John and Jane Doe go and buy a house, $350,000 house with a $280 loan amount, and here's their employers, and here's their unemployment insurance income, approximately. It varies by state, it's complicated, whatever. Okay, but say they both get $2,300 a month unemployment, then they have some car payments, some other debts, right, sort of typical thing. Well, their debt-to-income ratio, front end, back end, is 36% and 49%. The software approves them for a loan. Not the loan they'd get today, the tens of millions of loans they got during the COVID era. Because that's what matters, more than today. Many more people own houses with those mortgages than today's mortgages. That's the important thing to know. So you see this national payment to income ratio is at a near record high. If you get the loan today, yes, that's true. But not for the tens of millions, the massive bulk of the housing market that got their loan during the COVID era. And here you see it again. This looks terrible. Yikes, so bad. But this is what we really should be counting. And that's what most people aren't telling you. So inflation-induced debt destruction, super important concept. It's like getting in a time machine and going back to the future.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.